A single photograph of a family on vacation can conceal the final moment of happiness before the abyss. In the port of Itajaí, a picture captured four people embracing under the January sun. But 3 days later, the sea had no more answers to give. 4 years passed in absolute silence until workers forced open a rusted door and found something no one was ever meant to see. What lay inside that tied-up black bag would forever change the way we look at disappearances at sea. January of 2002 brought the Silveira family the promise of unforgettable days. Carlos, at 42, had saved for months to fulfill his wife Marta's dream. A sea cruise departing from Itajaí. As a public servant in Porto Alegre's Department of Education, his salary didn't allow for frequent luxuries, but this trip represented a special achievement. Marta, an elementary school teacher of 38, had been planning every detail for weeks. She saw the cruise as the perfect opportunity to create lasting memories with their children, 14-year-old Lucas and 9-year-old Camila. The children showed their excitement in different ways. Lucas, a typical teenager, feigned disinterest but was secretly looking forward to the adventure. Camila, however, couldn't contain her eagerness. On the morning of January 18th, the family set off from Porto Alegre towards the Santa Catarina coast. The 5-hour drive was filled with the children's growing animation and the quiet satisfaction of Carlos, who sipped chimarrão from his favorite gourd as he drove. That dark wooden gourd, a wedding gift from 15 years prior, was his constant companion on every journey. The port of Itajaí greeted them with a flurry of activity. Dozens of families awaited boarding for the Costa Serena, a medium-sized white vessel that promised 4 days of sailing along the Brazilian coast. Carlos parked their gray Corsa in the port's lot, double-checked the luggage, and briefed the children on the boarding procedures. Marta wore her favorite floral dress, the one with tropical prints she saved for special occasions. Lucas was in jean shorts and a blue t-shirt, a black backpack slung over his shoulders containing his most prized possessions: a Game Boy, headphones, and a few comic books. Camila, radiant in a pink dress with lace details, tightly clutched her cloth doll, an inseparable companion since she was 5. Before they boarded, a port employee offered to take their picture. They posed in front of the ship, the cloudless blue sky serving as a perfect backdrop. Carlos beamed, his right arm around Marta, his left hand holding his gourd. The children stood in front, Lucas trying to look mature and Camila showing off her doll for the camera. That photograph, later developed at a lab in Itajaí, would become the last official record of the Silveira family. In the image, 4 people radiate genuine happiness, with no hint of what awaited them in the days to come. The contrast between their smiles and their fate remains deeply unsettling to anyone who knows how the story ends. Boarding was uneventful. They presented their documents, received identification wristbands, and were led to cabin 247 on the middle deck. The room had 2 single beds that converted into a bunk bed, a compact bathroom, and a small window with an ocean view. Marta immediately organized their clothes in the narrow closet while Carlos tested the faucet and Lucas fiddled with the air conditioning controls. At 5 p.m., the ship's sirens announced their departure. The family went up to the top deck to watch as they left the port. Camila waved enthusiastically at strangers on the pier. Lucas took pictures with a disposable camera, and Marta hugged Carlos, whispering her gratitude for making this dream come true. The ship glided smoothly through the calm waters, leaving the bustling port behind as it headed toward the golden horizon of sunset. During dinner in the main restaurant, they met other Brazilian families. Carlos chatted animatedly with a retired engineer from Rio de Janeiro, while Marta exchanged teaching experiences with a fellow teacher from Florianopolis. The children quickly made friends with other young passengers, forming a group that planned to explore every corner of the ship together. That first night, they fell asleep to the gentle rocking of the waves. Lucas complained briefly of seasickness but soon grew accustomed to it. Camila drifted off, clutching her doll, while her parents whispered plans for the next day. Carlos carefully placed his gourd in the closet, promising to prepare a morning chimarrão on the outer deck. The second day brought a radiant sun and a tranquil sea. They participated in recreational activities, visited the game room, and enjoyed the ship's pool. Lucas took an interest in the video arcade, while Camila had fun in the children's area. Marta and Carlos took turns supervising the kids and enjoying romantic moments gazing out at the ocean. On the second night, they dined again in the main restaurant. Carlos ordered a special caipirinha. Marta chose a white wine and the children savored elaborate desserts. They retired to their room early, planning to wake up in time to watch the sunrise on the third day. It would be the last time anyone saw them alive. The third day began like any other on the Costa Serena cruise. The first rays of sun pierced the crystalline waters as the ship continued its scheduled route along the Santa Catarina coast. In cabin 247, however, something had changed during the night. When the cleaning crew tried to access the room at 9 in the morning, they found the door locked from the inside. Maria Santos, a seasoned stewardess with 15 years of experience on cruise ships, knocked discreetly. There was only silence. She waited a few minutes and tried again, this time announcing herself audibly. No response came from within. She checked her service schedule. The Silveira family should have vacated the room for cleaning as per general instructions. Throughout the morning, other passengers began to ask about the family from the south. At breakfast, the engineer from Rio found it strange that Carlos was absent for their planned game of dominoes. The teacher from Florianopolis looked for Marta at the morning activities but couldn't find her. The children who had befriended Lucas and Camila wandered the decks, searching for their new friends. Around 11 a.m., the activities coordinator, Roberto Mendes, decided to check on the situation himself. A methodical man of 45, Roberto had worked on numerous ships and knew the protocols for unusual situations. He went to cabin 247, accompanied by Maria Santos and the deck supervisor, Anderson Lima. They knocked again, identified themselves, and waited. The silence persisted. Anderson glanced at his watch. Noon was approaching. The time when all cabins were supposed to be available for maintenance. He decided to use the master key, following the ship's security procedures. The door swung open to reveal a disconcerting scene. The cabin was impeccably organized. The beds were made with military precision, luggage was neatly arranged in the closets, and the bathroom was clean with folded towels. It looked as if no one had slept there the previous night. Maria Santos, accustomed to the typical chaos of a room occupied by a family with children, was stunned by the absolute order. Roberto carefully examined every detail. In the closet, the family's clothes hung organized by size. Toiletries remained lined up on the bathroom counter. Even the bunk beds, which the children had used, were perfectly made with taut sheets and symmetrically placed pillows. Anderson noticed something peculiar. Certain personal items were missing. He consulted the inventory list the family had filled out upon boarding, a mandatory document for insurance purposes. Specific items were gone: a chimarrão gourd and its metal straw, a black school backpack, a colorful cloth doll, and some personal documents. The most baffling discovery came when Roberto checked the keycard system. The electronic log indicated that the cabin door had last been opened at 11:47 p.m. the previous night, using Carlos Silveira's primary card. Since then, no entry or exit had been registered, How could four people have left a room locked from the inside without triggering the security system? Maria Santos suggested checking the hallway surveillance cameras. The Costa Serena had a basic monitoring system, but it covered strategic areas including main corridors and outer decks. Anderson accompanied her to the security center, a small room near the command bridge. Julio Cardoso, the night security officer, reviewed the last 24 hours of footage. The images showed the Silveira family returning to their cabin around 10:30 p.m. after dinner. Carlos was carrying the gourd, Marta held her purse, Lucas had his backpack on, and Camila was hugging her doll. They entered the room together and the door closed behind them. Throughout the entire night, no footage captured any movement in the corridor near cabin 247. The cameras had worked perfectly, recording the comings and goings of other guests, stewards making their rounds, and even a cat that had snuck aboard in Itajaí. But not a single member of the Silveira family appeared on the recordings after entering their room. Roberto immediately initiated the emergency protocol. An announcement was made over the ship's public address system, requesting that passengers Carlos, Marta, Lucas, and Camila Silveira report to the reception desk urgently. The announcement was repeated at 15-minute intervals throughout the afternoon, yielding no response. The crew organized a systematic search of the entire vessel. They checked restrooms, service areas, lounges, outer decks, the kitchen, the laundry, and even technical compartments normally inaccessible to passengers. They questioned other guests about any possible sightings of the family. They consulted the restaurant staff about their presence at meals. During the afternoon, an additional discovery further puzzled the makeshift investigators. A lifeguard found a key card for cabin 247 floating in the main swimming pool. The object was wet but showed no signs of deterioration that would suggest it had been in the water for long. It seemed to have been placed there recently, perhaps during the night or in the early hours of the morning. Captain Ricardo Fontes, a veteran of 30 years sailing Brazilian seas, personally took control of the situation. A serious and experienced man, he had faced various emergencies before, but never a disappearance this peculiar. He decided to discreetly alter the ship's route, moving closer to the coast to facilitate a potential rescue operation. At 4 p.m., Ricardo contacted the Brazilian Navy and the federal police, reporting the disappearance of 4 Brazilian passengers. He provided the exact coordinates, weather conditions, the family's background, and all the evidence collected so far. News of the disappearance spread quietly among the passengers. Many families began to express concern, questioning the ship's safety. Roberto and his team worked to maintain a sense of normalcy, but the tension was palpable in the corridors and lounges. That night, another search was conducted with powerful flashlights on the outer decks. The possibility of an accident at sea during the night was considered, although no evidence supported this theory. The life jackets in cabin 247 remained untouched in their compartments, and no man overboard alarm had been triggered. The dawn of the 4th day brought reinforcements to the Costa Serena. A Brazilian Navy helicopter flew over the waters the ship had traversed in the last 48 hours. While 2 patrol boats began a systematic sweep of the area. Captain Fontes maintained direct contact with the Maritime Traffic Control Center, reporting every new development. Back in cabin 247, the crew's own improvised experts conducted a more meticulous examination. Roberto Mendez, with his experience in security procedures, photographed every detail with a digital camera borrowed from a passenger. The images revealed the room's suspicious orderliness. No dirty clothes, no objects out of place, no sign of a struggle or confusion. Maria Santos noticed something that had been overlooked in the first inspection. In the bathroom, 4 toothbrushes stood dry in their holder. The bars of soap showed no signs of recent use, and the towels were perfectly folded. It seemed the family had not used the bathroom at all the previous night, contradicting the normal routine of people sleeping in a room. Anderson Lima examined the cabin's window with special attention. The small porthole measured approximately 40 by 60 centimeters, too small for an adult to pass through, and it remained locked from the inside. There were no signs of tampering with the locking mechanism, nor any marks to indicate a forced entry. The glass was intact, without cracks or scratches. Later that morning, 2 federal police authorities arrived by helicopter. Lead investigator Antonio Machado and his clerk Fernanda Costa immediately began formal investigation procedures. They sealed off cabin 247 with security tape and decreed that only authorized personnel could access the area. Investigator Machado, a man in his 50s with vast experience in complex cases, set up a makeshift interrogation room in the ship's conference hall. He began by interviewing the crew members who had direct contact with the Silveira family: stewards, waiters, entertainers, and security staff. Each testimony was recorded in detail. Julio Cardoso, the night security officer, gave an extensive statement about the camera recordings. He confirmed that the system was functioning perfectly and that no footage showed the family leaving the cabin after 10:30 p.m. He provided the recordings on a DVD for further analysis by experts on land. Passengers who had interacted with the Silveiras were questioned about any unusual behavior. An engineer from Rio de Janeiro recalled that Carlos had seemed preoccupied during a game of dominoes on the second day, mentioning financial problems related to the cost of the trip. A teacher from Florianopolis said that Marta had spoken of Camila's seasickness during the first night. The children who had played with Lucas and Camila, however, provided the most revealing information. According to them, Lucas had mentioned his parents arguing in the cabin on the second night about money and debts. Camila had reportedly cried and asked to go home, saying she wasn't enjoying the ship. A waiter in the main restaurant, Jose Silva, remembered specific details about the family's last dinner. Carlos had requested a detailed bill of all extra charges, showing concern over additional expenses. Marta ate little and appeared tense. The children played with their food, a behavior that was unusual compared to observations from the previous days. Fernanda Costa organized a search of the belongings left in the cabin. She found the family's important documents: IDs, social security cards, credit cards, and even cash. Everything remained untouched in the luggage compartments. The selective absence of only the chimarrão gourd, the backpack, and the doll suggested a deliberate, planned departure, not an emergency situation. That afternoon, a macabre discovery was made by fishermen on a boat near the cruise ship. They found a pink child's life vest floating in the water, similar to those used by the Costa Serena. The object was immediately collected and handed over to the authorities for analysis. Though there were no signs of blood or violence, the discovery added a grim new dimension to the case. Chief Machado ordered a complete review of the ship's security systems. It was found that the Costa Serena had cameras only in the main corridors and common areas, but not on the outer decks during the night. This limitation created blind spots where people could move undetected. A theory began to take shape. The family could have left the cabin during the early morning hours, using unmonitored emergency exits. Roberto Mendes knew of alternative routes through the technical compartments, accessible through maintenance doors that remained unlocked during navigation. Anderson Lima led Machado through these secret routes. Narrow corridors connected different sections of the ship, allowing crew to move without using passenger areas. Some of these passages led directly to the lower outer decks, far from the security cameras. On the lower aft deck, they made a disturbing discovery: recent rope marks on the metal guardrail. The marks suggested that something heavy had been tied there and later removed. The scraped paint was fresh, likely from 24 to 48 hours before the discovery. Maria Santos then recalled another important detail. During her morning cleaning of the lower deck, she had found a puddle of salt water in a spot sheltered from the rain. At the time, she had attributed it to sea spray during the night's voyage. But now, this finding took on new significance. Analysis of the life vest yielded worrying results. The item did indeed belong to the Costa Serena, confirmed by an identification code embroidered on the fabric. More importantly, there were signs that it had been intentionally cut or torn rather than damaged by the natural action of waves or rocks. Chief Machado informed the families in Porto Alegre about the gravity of the situation. Lucas and Camila's grandparents immediately traveled to Itajaí, as did the siblings of Carlos and Marta. The arrival of relatives brought a new emotional element to the investigation, with growing pressure for concrete answers. That night, an emergency meeting was held between the captain, the chief, and representatives of the ship's parent company. They discussed the continuation of the voyage, the safety of the other passengers, and the impact on the company's reputation. The decision was made to return immediately to the port of Itajaí for a more detailed investigation. The early return of the Costa Serena to the port of Itajaí on the morning of January 22nd caused a commotion in the city. Journalists from various media outlets were waiting at the docks, alerted to the mysterious disappearance of a family during the cruise. The news had been leaked by the Silveira's relatives, who sought to mobilize public opinion. At the port, a more robust investigative structure was assembled by the federal police. Chief Machado requested criminal forensic experts, technical photographers, and security footage specialists. Cabin 247 was sealed to preserve all evidence until the professionals arrived. Dona Irene Silveira, Carlos's mother, arrived from Porto Alegre accompanied by her son-in-law, Roberto Santo, a 68-year-old woman who had raised 5 children alone after being widowed early. Dona Irene knew her son's personality well and insisted that he would never deliberately put his family in danger. Roberto Santos, an experienced mechanic and a practical man, offered important information about Carlos's financial situation. He revealed that his brother-in-law had taken out a bank loan to pay for the cruise, committing a large part of his salary for the coming months. Marta was unaware of the full extent of the debts, which could explain the arguments reported by other passengers. Lucas and Camila's maternal grandparents, Mr. João and Mrs. Maria Conceição Pereira, arrived later that afternoon. As retired teachers, they had helped the couple financially on previous occasions and knew of the economic difficulties the family faced. Mrs. Maria Conceição brought recent photographs of the children to aid in the search. Forensic expert Eduardo Freitas began a detailed examination of cabin 247. Using ultraviolet light, he found nearly imperceptible footprints on the bathroom floor, indicating that someone had carefully cleaned the area after its normal use. The excessive cleaning contrasted with the typical behavior of cruise guests, for whom tidiness is not usually a priority. Fingerprint analysis confirmed the presence of all 4 family members, but also revealed unidentified prints on specific objects: the interior door handle, the bathroom faucet, and a cabinet drawer. The unknown prints belonged to an adult, likely a man, with characteristics distinct from those of the family. Technical photographer Marcos Andrade meticulously documented every inch of the cabin. His images revealed details invisible to the naked eye: dark fabric fibers stuck to the door frame, superficial scratches on the floor near the bed, and a small reddish stain on the wall's baseboard, almost imperceptible but consistent with a blood spatter. The analysis of the security recordings by an image specialist brought a surprising discovery. Mario Campos identified an anomalous shadow passing through the corridor at 3:15 a.m. The shadow did not correspond to any clearly identifiable person but suggested human movement at a time when no passenger should have been circulating. An investigation into the boarding records revealed a worrying piece of information. There was an extra passenger on the ship who was not on the official list. Someone had boarded without proper registration, likely taking advantage of the typical chaos of cruise ship embarkations. This ghost passenger had no assigned cabin or identification wristband. Captain Ricardo Fontes admitted to failures in boarding control. During periods of intense movement, it was possible for people to board without rigorous checks, especially if they looked like crew members or port employees. The security system had flaws known to the administration, but they were considered low risk. Julio Cardoso, under the pressure of interrogation, revealed information he had initially omitted. During his night patrol, he had heard strange noises coming from the service area near the cabins. He had thought it was normal cleaning activity, but now considered the possibility that it was movement related to the family's disappearance. Jose Silva, the restaurant waiter, remembered another significant detail. An unknown man had asked specifically about the Silveira family during dinner on the second day. The individual had introduced himself as a passenger, but Jose did not recognize him from previous or subsequent meals. He described him as a dark-haired man about 35 years old with an unidentifiable accent. Maria Santos retrieved an important memory. On the morning the disappearance was discovered, she had seen a man hurriedly leaving the service area near the cabins. The man was carrying a dark bag and avoided eye contact. She had assumed he was a cleaning staff member working at an unusual time. Roberto Mendez organized a search for this mysterious man among the remaining passengers. He checked documents, compared photographs, and questioned other guests about possible sightings. No official passenger matched the description provided by Jose Silva and Maria Santos, confirming the theory of a clandestine boarding. That afternoon, Navy divers began an underwater search near the ship's route. Using sonar and detection equipment, they looked for submerged objects or bodies. The operation covered an area of approximately 5 square kilometers, focusing on the points where the life vest and rope marks were found. Chief Machado requested the Silveira family's bank information. He discovered that Carlos had withdrawn a significant amount of cash 2 days before boarding, partially emptying the checking account. The money was not found among the belongings in the cabin, suggesting it had either been taken by the missing family or stolen. An analysis of the credit cards showed an unauthorized use attempt in the early hours of the disappearance. Someone had tried to use Carlos's card at an electronic terminal on the ship itself, but the transaction was declined for exceeding the limit. The attempt occurred at 2:30 a.m., a time that coincided with the suspicious movement detected in the recordings. Fernanda Costa interviewed other ship employees, discovering that some had noticed strange behavior from certain crew members in the days leading up to the disappearance. A cook reported that a particular cleaning staff member had been asking insistent questions about families with children staying on the ship. The investigation was revealing a disturbing pattern. The disappearance of the Silveira family was neither accidental nor spontaneous. Evidence pointed to a premeditated act involving a person who knew the ship's routine and had access to restricted areas. The case was transforming from a disappearance into a possible kidnapping, or an even more serious crime. The morning of January 23rd brought a significant breakthrough. Forensic expert Eduardo Freitas completed the lab analysis of the reddish stain found in cabin 247. The result confirmed it was human blood, type O positive, consistent with Carlos Silveira, according to medical information provided by the family. The small amount suggested a minor injury, not extreme violence. Navy divers made a disturbing discovery on the seabed, 2 kilometers from the Costa Serena's route. They found a black school backpack partially buried in the ocean floor's mud. The object perfectly matched the description of Lucas Silveira's backpack. Its contents were damaged by salt water but still identifiable. Inside the recovered backpack were a Game Boy with corroded batteries, heavily deteriorated headphones, comic books turned into a paper pulp, and surprisingly, a handwritten note protected by a plastic bag. The writing was clearly Lucas's with his characteristic adolescent handwriting. It read, "Mommy is scared, Daddy said to be quiet, the man wants money." Roberto Santos immediately identified his nephew's handwriting upon seeing a photograph of the note. He confirmed that Lucas had a habit of writing short notes when he was nervous or frightened, a behavior he had developed as a child. The note suggested that the family was under threat before their final disappearance. Chief Machado intensified the search for the mysterious man described by the ship's staff. He worked with a police sketch artist to create a composite sketch based on the descriptions from Jose Silva and Maria Santos. The drawing showed a man of about 35, with dark, wavy hair, brown eyes, a small scar on his left eyebrow, and a pronounced chin. Distributing the sketch among the port workers in Itajaí yielded an unexpected result. A worker named Antonio Pereira recognized the man as someone who had been frequenting the port area in the days before the Costa Serena's departure. The individual had asked questions about cruise schedules and boarding procedures, claiming an interest in working in the tourism industry. A check of the port's entry logs revealed that the man had identified himself as Paulo Enrique da Costa, presenting an ID that was later discovered to be fake. The address provided corresponded to a vacant lot on the outskirts of Itajaí, and the phone number was non-existent. Maria Santos, during a new interrogation session, recalled additional details about her morning encounter with the suspicious man. He was carrying not only a dark bag but also a cylindrical object that could have been Carlos's Kimaro gourd. The man had seemed nervous and sweaty despite the mild morning temperature. Technical analysis of the rope marks found on the ship's guardrail confirmed that a heavy object had been tied there. A navigation expert estimated that the suspended weight would have been equivalent to approximately 80 kilograms, consistent with the weight of an adult person. The ropes used were a nautical type, available in any marine supply store. Dona Irene Silveira provided crucial information about Carlos's behavior in the weeks leading up to the cruise. Her son had been receiving strange phone calls at home, always answering in a low voice and showing nervousness after the conversations. Marta had even questioned him about the calls, but Carlos claimed they were work-related problems. Roberto Santos revealed that Carlos had borrowed money from several friends in the preceding months, always with vague justifications about family emergencies. The total amount of the loans was significant, far exceeding the family's normal expenses. Apparently, Carlos was involved in a financial situation more complex than he had admitted. A deeper banking investigation showed suspicious movements in Carlos's account over the 6 months before the cruise. Irregular deposits and withdrawals suggested activity unrelated to his public servant salary. Chief Machado requested a warrant to trace the origin of the mysterious contacts. Fernanda Costa began interviewing Carlos's colleagues at the Department of Education. The investigation uncovered that Carlos had requested an unpaid leave of absence for personal reasons, set to begin immediately after the cruise. He had cited an urgent family matter. Crucially, the leave had been approved well in advance, suggesting that Carlos planned to be away from work regardless of what happened on the voyage. Marta's colleague, a teacher named Sonia Martins, came forward with a chilling conversation that had taken place a week before they set sail. Marta had confided that Carlos was caught up in some kind of trouble, and that the trip was an opportunity to resolve everything far from Porto Alegre. At the time, Sonia had assumed it was merely marital strife. Now the words carried a far more sinister weight. An analysis of Carlos's phone records confirmed this growing sense of dread. In the months leading up to the disappearance, he had been in frequent contact with an unidentified number. The number belonged to a prepaid phone purchased with false documents. The calls were always made at specific times, early in the morning, during his lunch hour, and late in the afternoon. Forensic expert Eduardo Freitas found new evidence in cabin 247, fibers of nautical rope embedded in the carpet near the door. The fibers were a perfect match to those found on the guardrail of the lower deck. This confirmed that ropes had been handled inside the cabin, likely used to bind or immobilize someone. Under pressure, the night security chief, Julio Cardozo, finally cracked. He admitted to accepting a bribe to ignore certain suspicious activities during his shift. A man had offered him a sum of cash to simply see nothing special during the early hours of the third day. Julio, thinking it was a clandestine romantic encounter, had taken the money. Captain Ricardo Fontes revealed that the Costa Serena itself had been the target of anonymous threats in the weeks before the cruise. Handwritten letters had arrived at the company's head office, mentioning settling scores that would take place during one of the voyages. Management had dismissed the threats as a tasteless prank and never reported them to the authorities. A passenger, Costa Silva, recalled a conversation he'd casually overheard between the mysterious man and another individual in the ship's restaurant. They spoke of merchandise that was to be transferred at sea, mentioning contacts in the south who would be waiting for the shipment. At the time, Jose had thought it was a common business conversation. Roberto Mendez organized a check of all vessels that had been near the Costa Serena during its journey. Port Authority records revealed that a fishing boat had been sailing parallel to the cruise ship for part of the early morning on the third day. The vessel had no authorization for night fishing in that region. The boat's owner, a fisherman named Sebastião Oliveira, was located at his home in the fishing community of Penha. A nervous and evasive man of 52, he admitted to having sailed near the Costa Serena in his fishing boat, but denied any contact with the ship, claiming he was simply searching for schools of fish in his usual grounds. An analysis of Sebastián's boat, however, told a different story. It showed signs of a recent, thorough cleaning with harsh chemicals. The smell of disinfectant was overpowering, highly unusual for a fishing vessel. Detective Machado ordered a full forensic examination of the boat. Later that afternoon, a new discovery shook the investigation to its core. A child playing on the beach in Penha found a cloth doll half buried in the sand. The toy matched the description of Camila Silveira's doll exactly. Colorful fabric with a flower print, yellow yarn for hair, and a blue calico dress. Camila's doll was immediately sent for forensic analysis. Eduardo Freitas found traces of salt water, sea sand, and most disturbingly, small drops of blood on the fabric of the dress. The blood was type AB negative, a rare type that matched Camila's according to medical records provided by her grandparents. Sebastião Oliveira was brought to the Itajaí police station for formal interrogation. Under mounting pressure, he began to contradict his earlier statements. He admitted to seeing strange activity on the Costa Serena that morning, but insisted he had not participated in anything illegal. He claimed his boat had approached out of curiosity, not by design. The forensic report from his fishing boat exposed his lies. In the fish storage compartment, technicians found fabric fibers identical to the clothes the Silveira family had been described as wearing. Even more damning, a luminol analysis detected traces of blood on the floor of the vessel. Blood that had been carefully cleaned but was still detectable by scientific equipment. Then Roberto Santos provided a piece of information that changed the course of the investigation. He revealed that Carlos had confided in him that he was involved with agents from a kidnapping organization operating in the southern region. It had started with him being an unwilling informant providing details on families with financial potential, but Carlos had been gradually coerced into taking a more active role in their criminal schemes. Donna Irene confirmed her son-in-law's desperate situation. Carlos had come home some nights visibly shaken, muttering that there was no turning back, and that he had to protect his family from dangerous people. The cruise, she now understood, was Carlos's attempt to escape the commitments he had made to these criminals. Detective Machado requested information on similar kidnappings and disappearances in the region over the preceding months. He uncovered a disturbing pattern. At least 3 families had vanished under strange circumstances during tourist trips. All of them shared socioeconomic characteristics with the Silveiras, middle class, with young children and recent financial difficulties. An analysis of Sebastián Oliveira's records revealed connections to individuals known to the police. His brother, Mauro Oliveira, had a criminal record for drug trafficking and organized crime. The Oliveira family was suspected of involvement in maritime smuggling and other illegal activities along the coast. Fernanda Costa organized an operation to locate Mauro Oliveira. She discovered he had left his usual residence in Penha just 2 days after the Silveira family disappeared. Neighbors reported strange nocturnal activity at the house, with unknown vehicles and people carrying heavy objects. During a new round of questioning, José Silva provided a more detailed description of the conversation he had overheard in the restaurant. The mysterious man had mentioned 4 packages to be delivered at an arranged point and spoke of a large cash payment. They used phrases typical of criminal negotiations. An investigation into the family's bank accounts revealed a suspicious deposit made the day before they embarked. The sum of 10,000 reais had been transferred into Carlos's account from a business account registered to a non-existent company. The money was immediately withdrawn in cash. Eduardo Freitas completed his analysis of the mate gourd found in the abandoned cabin of the old ship. He confirmed it belonged to Carlos Silveira through fingerprints and the unique characteristics of the handcrafted piece. More importantly, the gourd had small holes in it, as if made by a drill, altering its original function. Roberto Mendez uncovered a relevant detail in the Costa Serena's maintenance logs. The ship had recently undergone a refit at a shipyard in Itajaí, where several temporary employees had been hired without rigorous background checks. Among them was a false name corresponding to Paulo Henrique da Costa, a previously mentioned person of interest. Antonio Pereira, a port worker, recalled an additional detail about the suspicious man. He had specifically asked about families with children who would be boarding the Costa Serena, showing a particular interest in complete family groups, atypical behavior for someone supposedly looking for a job in tourism. A computer graphics expert analyzing the security footage revealed digital manipulation in some of the images. Specific frames had been altered to hide movements at critical times. The manipulation was sophisticated, suggesting advanced technical knowledge on the part of those involved. Maria Santos, a cleaner, admitted to receiving a bribe to overlook certain irregularities during her rounds. An unknown woman had offered her money not to clean a specific cabin for a certain period. Maria had accepted, thinking it was a request for privacy from important guests. Dona Maria Conceição Pereira provided family photographs that revealed a crucial detail. Camila had a distinctive birthmark on her neck, a small blemish in the shape of a crescent moon. This mark would be essential for identification if the child were ever found, dead or alive. An examination of Marta's phone records showed that she had attempted to call the emergency number, 190, on the morning of the disappearance. The call lasted only a few seconds and was cut off before any effective communication could be made. The time of the attempt was 2:47 a.m., coinciding with the period of greatest suspicious activity on the ship. Confronted with the mounting evidence, Sebastião Oliveira began to show signs of extreme distress. He requested the presence of a lawyer and demonstrated knowledge of case details that an innocent man should not have known. His story about simple curiosity was clearly unraveling. Detective Machado organized a reconstruction of the events on the morning of the disappearance. Using the collected evidence, he established a probable timeline. The family was subdued in their cabin, removed from the ship via service routes, and transferred to Sebastián's boat. The operation involved at least 3 people in addition to the fishermen. The forensic analysis of the doll revealed that it had been in a marine environment for less than 48 hours before being found on the beach. This suggested it had been deliberately placed in the sand, perhaps as a message or a distraction, not accidentally lost during a crime at sea. On the morning of January 25th, Sebastião Oliveira finally confessed his involvement in the disappearance of the Silveira family. Crushed by the weight of the evidence and on the advice of his lawyer, he admitted to having participated in a kidnapping operation, but insisted he had acted only as the maritime transporter, not as the leader of the criminal action. According to Sebastián's account, he was hired by his brother Mauro to carry out a special transport on the 3rd morning of the cruise. He received instructions to sail close to the Costa Serena and wait for a specific light signal. Around 3:30 in the morning, he saw a lantern flashing a prearranged code from the ship's lower deck. The fisherman described how a rope was thrown from the ship to his boat. Down the rope came 4 people bound and gagged, 2 adults and 2 children. Sebastián acknowledged he knew it was a kidnapped family, but claimed he had been threatened with death if he refused to participate. The criminals, he said, had threatened his own family. Carlos Silveira was conscious during the transport, but a severe wound to his head bled freely. Beside him, Marta was unconscious, likely under the effect of drugs. The children wept in silence, their small mouths sealed with adhesive tape. Sebastián drove them to a small, abandoned pier in the fishing community of Armação do Itapocoroi. There, Mauro Oliveira waited with 2 other men and a dark van. Sebastián watched as the family was transferred into the vehicle but took no part in the subsequent stages of the operation. He received his payment, 5,000 reais in cash, and strict instructions to maintain absolute silence about the night's events. Chief Machado immediately organized an operation to locate Mauro Oliveira and the van. Teams from the civil and federal police established a perimeter around Armação do Itapocoroi, a small coastal community known for its traditional fishing activities and low police presence. The investigation quickly revealed that Mauro had rented an isolated house near the beach 3 months before the kidnapping. The property belonged to an elderly widow who lived in the capital and rarely visited. Neighbors recalled seeing suspicious movement at the house during the week of the family's disappearance. Fernanda Costa coordinated the search of the rented house. The residence was abandoned, but signs of recent occupation were evident. Leftover food, clothes left in closets, and medication. More disturbing were the cut ropes and used adhesive tape scattered across the floor of the main room. In the backyard, civil police sniffer dogs detected the scent of decomposition beneath a shallow layer of earth. A careful excavation revealed buried clothes, Marta's floral dress, Lucas's blue t-shirt, and Camila's pink dress. The garments were stained with blood and dirt, but there were no bodies at the site. Roberto Santos identified the clothes as belonging to his missing family members. Dona Irene specifically recognized Marta's dress, a piece she herself had gifted her daughter-in-law the previous Christmas. The discovery confirmed the family had been held there alive, but it raised terrifying questions about their ultimate fate. Forensic analysis of the clothing revealed different blood types. Carlos's blood was on Lucas's shirt, Marta's was on her own dress, and Camila's blood was found on all three pieces. The pattern of stains suggested multiple, though not necessarily fatal, injuries. The children appeared to have been wounded more superficially than the adults. Footprint analysis at the house showed the movement of at least 5 adults in addition to the kidnapped family. One set of prints matched a size 42 military boot, another a size 36 women's athletic shoe, indicating that the kidnappers included at least one woman. The nearest neighbor, a retired fisherman named Osvaldo Santos, revealed he had seen a dark van leaving the house in the early hours of January 24th. The vehicle carrying several people headed toward the main highway. Osvaldo noted that the occupants seemed unnaturally quiet, a detail he found strange. Meanwhile, an investigation at local gas stations identified a suspicious refueling by a white Fiat Ducato van on the same morning. The station attendant remembered a nervous driver who paid in cash and avoided conversation. Unfortunately, the establishment's security cameras were turned off for maintenance. Confronted with new information, Jose Silva admitted he had lied in his previous statement. He revealed that the mysterious man on the ship had introduced himself as a debt collector, mentioning that Carlos Silveira would pay one way or another for what he owed. The conversation had been far more specific and threatening than initially reported. Seeking a reduced sentence through collaboration, Sebastián Oliveira provided information about the criminal organization. According to him, the group specializing in kidnappings had been operating in the southern region for at least 2 years, always targeting victims who were in debt or had connections that made them easy to approach. Carlos had become entangled with the organization after incurring debts from illegal gambling in Porto Alegre. Initially, he paid exorbitant interest but was gradually coerced into providing information about colleagues and acquaintances who could be profitable targets. Dona Maria Conceição recalled a conversation she had with Marta 2 weeks before the cruise. Her daughter had mentioned that Carlos was involved with dangerous people and that she feared for her family's safety. Marta had considered canceling the trip, but Carlos had insisted it would be an opportunity to resolve everything for good. Roberto Mendez discovered that Paulo Enrique da Costa, the identity used by the mysterious man, had worked temporarily at the shipyard during the Costa Serena's renovation. This explained his detailed knowledge of the ship's service routes and surveillance blind spots. The deeper investigation revealed that the criminal organization had branches in several Brazilian states, using kidnappings as a form of debt collection. They forced victims to settle debts through payments from their own families or the sale of personal assets. An analysis of bank accounts linked to the suspects showed suspicious financial movements totaling more than 200,000 reais in the months preceding the kidnapping. The money circulated through ghost accounts and non-existent companies, a clear sign of money laundering. Chief Machado established a task force with police from Santa Catarina, Rio Grande do Sul, and Paraná to locate other members of the organization. The Silveira family case was uncovering a criminal scheme far more extensive than initially imagined. The investigation gained new urgency when Sebastián Oliveira revealed that the Silveira family had not been killed immediately after the kidnapping. According to his information, the criminal group kept victims alive as leverage for payment and for use in other schemes. Carlos, specifically, held additional value due to his knowledge of public officials and their routines. Mauro Oliveira was finally located in a motel in the city of Joinville, accompanied by a woman identified as Sandra Milo, 29, who had a record for fraud and criminal association. During his arrest, Mauro was carrying a false document and a significant amount of cash, confirming his active participation in the criminal organization. Under interrogation, Sandra Mello revealed disturbing details about the family's captivity. She said the victims were held in an abandoned warehouse in Garuva, a border town between Santa Catarina and Paraná. The location was used by the organization as an operations center for multiple simultaneous kidnappings. The woman described the conditions of captivity. The family was kept in a separate compartment of the warehouse, fed a meager meal once a day. The children were constantly crying, and Carlos was trying to negotiate his release by offering information on other potential targets. Marta, due to her state of panic, was frequently sedated. Chief Machado organized an immediate operation to raid the warehouse in Garuva. Specialized teams from the federal police surrounded the rural area indicated by Sandra, a region of difficult access characterized by dirt roads and isolated properties. The rescue had to be executed with precision to prevent the victim's execution. The warehouse was found exactly where Sandra had indicated, an abandoned masonry building surrounded by dense woods, previously used for storing agricultural equipment. Suspicious vehicles were parked at the back of the property, confirming the presence of organization members. During the tactical approach, police officers heard voices coming from inside the warehouse. At least 4 people were identified talking in low tones, but it was impossible to confirm the Silveira family's presence by sound alone. The raid was planned to minimize risks to any potential victims. At 6:30 a.m. on January 28th, police forces simultaneously stormed the warehouse from 3 different access points. They found 5 armed criminals, but no member of the Silveira family was present. The criminals were apprehended, but the absence of the victims raised grave concern about their whereabouts. Interrogation of the captured criminals revealed that the family had been transferred 2 days earlier to another location. The group's leader, identified as Rogério Silva, 35, admitted that the victims were alive but refused to reveal where they had been taken, using the information as a bargaining chip for a reduced sentence. Sandra Mello, confronted with the arrest of her accomplices, decided to cooperate fully with the investigations. She revealed that there were at least 3 different locations used by the organization to hold victims, a rotational system designed to hinder location by the authorities. According to Sandra, the Silveira family had been transferred to an abandoned farm near the city of São Bento do Sul. The isolated rural property belonged to a native member of the organization and was considered safer due to its distance from urban centers and the low circulation of people in the region. Roberto Santos, closely following the investigation, provided a piece of information that changed the police strategy. He revealed that Carlos had left a secret code with his wife for emergency situations. If he ever mentioned a specific saint's name in a phone conversation, it would mean he was in extreme danger and needed immediate help. An analysis of intercepted call records showed a contact attempt from Carlos 2 days earlier. In a call lasting only a few seconds to a public number, he had mentioned São Bento before the communication was cut off. At the time, investigators had not understood the significance of the reference. Fernanda Costa coordinated a new siege operation, this time directed at the rural region of São Bento do Sul. Using detailed maps and Sandra's information about the farm's characteristics, specialized teams began a systematic search for abandoned properties in the indicated area. The owner of a commercial establishment on the road leading to the rural zone remembered suspicious movement 3 days earlier. A white van had passed by, carrying several people, and the occupants appeared injured or sick. The driver had bought medicine and food in an unusual quantity. The farm was located after an 8-hour search, It was a property of approximately 10 hectares with a main house in a state of deterioration, surrounded by a eucalyptus plantation that offered natural camouflage. Two vehicles were parked near the entrance, confirming the presence of occupants. During a cautious approach, police detected signs of life inside the house. Low voices, movement, and most importantly, a child's cry. The confirmation of a child's presence brought hope that at least part of the Silveira family was alive in captivity. The captured leader, Rogério Silva, was brought to the scene in an attempt to negotiate a peaceful surrender of his accomplices. Through a megaphone, he tried to convince the criminals to give themselves up without violence, warning that resistance would be futile against the established police cordon. The response came in the form of a gunshot aimed at the police teams. The criminals inside the house demonstrated their willingness for an armed confrontation, significantly raising the risks for any hostages held inside. The situation demanded a more complex resolution strategy. A negotiation specialist was called in to establish a dialogue with the kidnappers. The objective was to confirm the victim's condition and seek a peaceful surrender that would preserve the lives of both the hostages and the criminals themselves. The negotiation process could last for hours. The specialist, Chief Marcos Ribeiro, established communication with the criminals via a telephone found on the farm. After 2 hours of tense dialogue, he managed to confirm that 4 hostages were alive inside the house, 2 adults and 2 children, matching the description of the missing Silveira family. Carlos had suffered more serious injuries during the days of captivity, showing signs of infection in a cut on his head sustained during the kidnapping. Marta remained in a state of severe psychological shock, but was physically stable. Lucas had an injury on his right arm while Camila showed signs of malnutrition and dehydration. The leader of the criminals at the farm, identified as Valdir Santos, Rogério Silva's brother, demanded a helicopter and safe passage to a neighboring country in exchange for the hostages' release. The alternative, he threatened, would be the immediate execution of the family, a threat the police forces took very seriously considering the organization's history of violence. During the negotiations, Valdir revealed a piece of information that shocked the investigators. The Silveira family was not the only group held by the organization. There were at least 2 other family units in captivity in different locations, a system that transformed their crimes into an industrial operation of continuous extortion. Direct communication was established with Carlos Silveira by phone. In a voice, weak and trembling, Carlos confirmed the identities of all his family members. He then provided a secret code, one previously established with Roberto Santos, confirming the authenticity of the call. Carlos then revealed a horrifying truth. Under psychological and physical torture, he had been forced to provide personal data on dozens of people, colleagues, neighbors, and acquaintances who could serve as lucrative targets for future kidnappings. This information was already being used to expand the gang's operations. Throughout the negotiations, the kidnapper, Valdir Santos, displayed a growing emotional instability, his mood swinging wildly between violent threats and moments of apparent willingness to talk. Criminal behavior experts identified signs of stimulant drug use, a factor that only increased the unpredictability of the volatile situation. After a grueling 6-hour siege, the negotiator managed to secure a partial agreement. Valdir consented to release the children in exchange for a guarantee regarding his conditions. At 2:30 in the afternoon, Lucas and Camila were released near the house and immediately attended to by an emergency medical team. Lucas, though shaken, was conscious and able to provide invaluable information about the house's interior and the criminals' positions. He confirmed the presence of 3 armed men in addition to Valdir, all of them showing increasing nervousness. He also described the approximate location where his parents were being held. Camila, however, was in a far more delicate state. She showed signs of severe psychological trauma. Unable to speak coherently, she could only repeat the names of her family members, crying uninterruptedly. The medical team determined she required immediate specialized psychological care. The children's release brought partial relief but massively increased the pressure on the operation to rescue their parents. After releasing the children, Valdir Santos's behavior grew even more erratic. He alternated between promises to free the adults and threats to execute them if his demands were not met. In the late afternoon, the intelligence provided by Lucas was critical, allowing elite snipers to take up strategic positions around the house. The teenager had given a detailed description of the windows, doors, and internal layout, crucial data for a potential raid. At 5:45 p.m., the situation took a dramatic turn when shots were heard from inside. Valdir screamed into the phone, claiming he had executed Carlos for attempting to escape and threatening to do the same to Marta if the police siege wasn't immediately lifted. Medical teams were placed on maximum alert as the operation commander evaluated the possibility of an immediate breach. The sounds of a physical struggle and a woman's screams indicated Marta was being assaulted, a situation that demanded a swift response. The decision was made at 6:20 p.m., a simultaneous raid from 3 different points of the house, with the objective of neutralizing the criminals before they could inflict more harm on the remaining hostage. The operation was executed with surgical precision, resulting in the capture of 3 criminals and the death of Valdir Santos during the exchange of fire. Marta Silveira was found alive in a back room, tied up and injured but conscious. She showed signs of recent physical violence, but her injuries were not immediately life-threatening. A medical team treated her on site before transferring her to the hospital. Carlos Silveira was discovered in grave condition in the basement. He had been shot in the abdomen during a confrontation with Valdir, but was still breathing when the officers found him. He received emergency medical attention before being rushed into surgery. The rescue operation was deemed a partial success. The family was reunited after 6 days in captivity. But Carlos required emergency surgery to remove the bullet and repair internal damage. His prognosis was guarded, but there was hope for a full recovery. The investigation at the site uncovered an arsenal of weapons, false documents, cash, and most importantly, a list with the names and addresses of dozens of potential victims for future kidnappings. The seized material confirmed the industrial scale of the dismantled criminal organization. Carlos Silveira remained in critical condition for 3 days following his surgery. Doctors at San Jose Hospital in Joinville worked tirelessly to repair the damage caused by the bullet that had pierced his abdomen. His family held a constant vigil, fearing he would not survive. Marta was discharged after 2 days of observation but was immediately referred for specialized psychological treatment. The trauma of captivity had left deep emotional scars, panic attacks, severe insomnia, and an inability to be alone. Her mother, Maria Conceição, took over her direct care during her recovery. Lucas showed remarkable resilience, providing investigators with precise details about the criminal organization's operations. He revealed that during his captivity, he had observed other vehicles arriving and leaving with people, confirming suspicions that the gang was holding multiple victims simultaneously. Camila had the most difficulty adjusting after the rescue. Constant nightmares, a refusal to eat, and regressive behavior worried the psychologist responsible for her treatment. Her cloth doll, returned by the police after forensic analysis, became her inseparable companion throughout her psychological recovery. Interrogation of the captured criminals revealed the organization's complex structure. Beyond their base in Santa Catarina, they had active cells in Rio Grande do Sul, Paraná, and Sao Paulo. Police estimated they held at least 15 families captive at any given time, generating a monthly income of over R$500,000. The primary leader, Rogério Silva, decided to cooperate in exchange for a lighter sentence, providing the locations of other hideouts and details of their money laundering scheme. His cooperation led to the liberation of 8 additional families. Sandra Mello, another gang member, revealed that the Silveira family had been targeted based on information provided by Carlos himself while he was being forced to work for them. Ironically, he had contributed to his own family's kidnapping by detailing their routine and financial situation. Carlos finally emerged from critical condition after a week in the hospital. His first act was to embrace his children and ask for forgiveness for the involvement that led to their ordeal. The Silveira family returned to Porto Alegre 2 months after the rescue in March of 2006. They sold their house to pay off debts Carlos had incurred and started over in a rented apartment. The move was both a new beginning and a measure of protection against possible retaliation. Lucas returned to his studies with the support of a school psychologist, showing a fierce determination to overcome the trauma. He developed an interest in criminal law, declaring his intention to one day help families like his own. Camila required prolonged psychological support but gradually regained the typical behavior of a child her age. Her return to school was carefully managed, with teachers briefed on her needs. Marta never again set foot on any kind of boat, developing a specific phobia of ships. The emotional recovery process would take several years. The criminal's trial took place in 2007, with the leaders receiving sentences of over 20 years. In 2008, the Silveira family moved again, this time to a small town where no one knew their story, seeking the peace and anonymity needed to rebuild their lives. 4 years had passed since the rescue when a macabre discovery in the port of Itajaí brought the memories flooding back. In March of 2010, workers dismantling an abandoned cruise ship, the Costa Bella, found something in a rusted cabin, a black plastic bag bound with chains. Next to it lay a chimarrão gourd identical to the one belonging to Carlos Silveira. The federal police were called in. The lead detective, the same man who had handled the original case, immediately recognized the connection. The black bag was a chilling echo of the methods used by the dismantled criminal organization. An initial analysis revealed the bag contained human remains in an advanced state of decomposition. The investigation determined that the Costa Bella had been used by the same criminal ring as a disposal site for victims whose ransoms were never paid. The abandoned cabins of the ship had served as a clandestine cemetery. Rogério Silva, still serving his sentence, confirmed this. He revealed the gang had access to the ship through a corrupt port employee and had used it to eliminate evidence, admitting that at least 5 people had been executed and left in different cabins. The forensic analysis of the remains revealed they belonged to a man between 40 and 50 years old, a victim of fatal blade wounds. The investigation of other cabins on the Costa Bella led to the discovery of 3 more bags, bringing the total number of victims to 4. The identification of these victims revealed a disturbing pattern. All were people who, like Carlos, had been coerced into working for the organization and were silenced when they became a liability. The discovery in the port of Itajaí led to a new trial. Charges of qualified homicide were added to the kidnappers' sentences. The Silveira family followed the developments from a distance, unwilling to reopen the wounds they had worked so hard to heal. The Costa Bella was completely dismantled after the investigation concluded, eliminating the site that had served as a floating cemetery. The case officially closed in 2008, with the final convictions of the remaining gang members. Carlos, Marta, Lucas, and Camila could finally put the traumatic chapter behind them. Their family's reconstruction had been long and painful, but it stood as a testament to the human capacity for resilience. Lucas enrolled in law school, specializing in criminal law, driven by a desire to help other victims. Camilla developed normally after years of psychological support, though she retained certain peculiarities related to her trauma. She could never sleep without a light on and always kept her rag doll close. Despite these lingering shadows of her ordeal, she blossomed into a cheerful and communicative child. Carlos, in turn, took a new job at a technical school in the rural heart of the state, a place where no one knew his past. The traumatic experience had reshaped his personality, making him more cautious. He shied away from public exposure, his social life now confined to the trusted circle of his family. He never again touched a chimero gourd. Marta returned to the classroom, but with a new purpose. She specialized in the education of traumatized children. Her own harrowing experience granted her a unique sensitivity, allowing her to identify the subtle signs of violence in her students. Her job transformed into a life's mission, to help young people who had endured situations similar to her own. The discovery at Costa Serena in 2006 brought definitive closure to the case, confirming that the Silveira family had escaped a far more terrible fate. Learning of the executions carried out by the organization only deepened their sense of gratitude for their survival and their ability to overcome such traumatic circumstances. Roberto Santos remained a steadfast presence, offering both financial and emotional support throughout their rebuilding process. The solidarity shown by his brother-in-law became a powerful example of how family bonds can be fortified in the face of extreme crisis. The grandmothers, Dona Irene and Dona Maria Conceição, also played a fundamental role in the psychological recovery of their grandchildren. Their unconditional love provided the emotional stability Lucas and Camila needed to overcome the trauma of the kidnapping, and their constant presence helped to soothe the lingering scars of captivity. The criminal organization was completely dismantled. In coordinated operations between state and federal police, 23 of its members were arrested. Their industrialized kidnapping scheme was eliminated, bringing a new sense of security to hundreds of families who had lived under threat. The Silveira case also had a lasting impact on Brazilian legislation. Influenced by their ordeal, laws regarding kidnapping were changed, with harsher penalties and improved investigation procedures to combat specialized criminal groups. In this way, the family indirectly contributed to the protection of countless future victims. In 2010, the family chose to move one last time, settling permanently in a small, quiet community where they finally found the anonymity and tranquility they craved. This simple life in the countryside offered them the space for emotional healing and the opportunity for a new beginning, far from the shadows of their traumatic memories. The case remains a testament to the fact that even seemingly perfect crimes can be unraveled through persistent investigation and collaboration between different police forces. The rescue of the Silveira family saved not only 4 lives, but also those of dozens of other potential victims. Their story has become a symbol of resistance and resilience. The family's ability to rebuild their lives after such an extreme trauma has inspired other families who have faced similar situations, demonstrating that even the deepest scars can heal when met with support, love, and determination. If this story has moved you, please show your support by leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with others. True stories like this serve as a powerful reminder of the importance of family unity and the need for vigilance against organized crime. Let us know in the comments if there are other cases you would like to see us investigate here on the channel.